Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala said that this ayah came down with regard to a response to the shubha. And it's still a shubha mentioned today, which is that the Prophet ﷺ had too many wives. Or that why was he allowed to marry Zainab binti Jahsh? Or why did he marry Aisha when he married Aisha at a young age? For all of this is responded to the ayah. There is no blame upon the Prophet ﷺ with regard to what Allah ordained for him and what Allah permitted for him, what Allah Azza wa Jal imposed upon him. For this ayah responds to all of those. That it is Allah who has permitted for the Prophet ﷺ in marriage what he permitted. And some of those things are permitted for all of the believers, such as marrying the divorced wife of the adopted son or marrying the cousin, for example. That's permitted to all the believers. Like it's not permitted for the believing men to have more than 4 wives. فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ مَثْنَى وَثُلَاثَ وَرُبَاعَ. So this is to respond to all of that it is Allah who decreed this. And if you look at the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ, I'll just highlight 2 or 3 important things. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ could have married anybody that he wanted. We all agree with that, right? That there's no woman who would have refused to marry the Prophet ﷺ, and there's no family who would have refused to give their daughter to the Prophet ﷺ. This is something that is by nature. Everyone wanted their daughter to marry the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ had his choice of any of the women of the Arabs, and the non-Arabs. How beautiful, how, what status she has, every family would have married. Yet the Prophet ﷺ did not take advantage of that for his own interest. He ﷺ mostly married divorcees. In fact, all of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ were divorcees except for, or had been previously married. Not all of them were divorcees, some of them their husbands died. They had been previously married except for Aisha radiallahu anha. She's the only wife of the Prophet ﷺ that was never previously married. So the first thing is the Prophet ﷺ did not marry out of his own interest. And he married in what Allah Azza wa Jal ordained for him, that Allah Azza wa Jal ordained. And subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal married Zainab to the Prophet ﷺ as an ordinance, an ordainment. It wasn't something that was chosen by the Prophet ﷺ. It wasn't that the Prophet ﷺ was asked, would you like to marry Zainab? He was told, Zainab is married to you. زَوَّجْنَاكَهَا, you are married to her. And it's a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ didn't choose. He looked at what was good for the Muslims and what was good for them. And he looked at the marriages that would cement love between the Muslims and bring the different tribes together. For that has a maslaha which is greater. Also, the mafsada of marrying more than 4. What is the mafsada marrying more than 4? Is that you can't be just, that the man will fall short financially, physically, emotionally. He cannot handle more than 4. Like in that mafsada is not present among the Prophet ﷺ. Neither in terms of Allah Azza wa Jal provided for him what he provided, and in terms of his physical, any characteristics that Allah gave him that he did not give to any man. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ كان يطوف بنسائه صلى الله عليه وسلم. He used to go to each one of his wives in turn. Nobody can do that. That's unique من خصائص النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. On top of that, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had his personality and his manners were not like anybody else. For the mafsada, the thing that people are not allowed to go over 4 wives for, is not present with him. So there is a maslaha which is very important, which is to bring the Muslims together, to build ties between them. And subhanAllah, if you look at, for example, Safiya radiallahu anha, when the Prophet was married, tribes were freed from imprisonment because of the Prophet marrying into them. Entire tribes were freed because of that. And there's a lot happened in those marriages that brought people together. But most importantly, it gave a chance for the laws and the rulings of the husband and wife in the home, things that could not be known any other way, to be learned and to be spread out. And all the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, they learned ahadith and they learned things that other people didn't see. And they were able to spread that among the people. So there are many, many reasons why Allah Azza wa Jal ordained for the Prophet ﷺ to marry more than one. Like in the Prophet ﷺ, when he married the wives that he married, he wasn't marrying the one that was necessarily good for him personally. That's not haram, right? It's not haram to marry who you want to marry, who's good for you personally. Like in a lot of the times, it was a marriage that was good for the ummah, it was good for the society. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responds to all of those people and says, all of your statements about the Prophet ﷺ has no basis, because it is Allah who ordained upon him his marriages, and there's no harm for him in what he chose in that. For example, Allah Azza wa Jalla said that if a woman who offers herself in marriage to the Prophet ﷺ and without the wali, that the Prophet ﷺ can accept it. This is all from what Allah Azza wa Jalla ordained upon him. It's not his choice.